Your resume is not just a list of everything that you have done, nor is it all about the way that it looks. The way that you sound in your resume makes a big difference to the value proposition that you are presenting to a hiring manager. So does your resume sound weak, or are you communicating with confidence, clarity, and credibility? Today I want to talk about the 4 ways that your resume can sound weak and what to do about it instead. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. It took me about over a decade of managing marketing and communications to finally realize that your resume isn't just this professional document. It is a marketing pitch for your professional brand, for your personal brand. So the way that you communicate in your resume should be compelling. It should inspire confidence for the person that is reading it. But not only does it inspire confidence in the person that is reading your resume, it will also inspire confidence within you. It will help you to very articulately understand the value that you bring to an organization and be able to communicate with confidence in interviews when you do get invited for them. If you find that you're not being invited to interviews as yet, it might not be that you lack the experience for the role, but it could just be that you aren't selling yourself strong enough. So let's talk about the ways that your resume could sound weak and how to fix that so you are getting invited to interviews. Number 1 could be that you lack a personal voice in your resume. Does your resume read like a job description? Or now with so many people using AI to write their resumes, does it feel robotic? Robotic AI content can be really obvious to the person that is reading resume after resume. So while it might not be completely obvious at your end, it can be more noticeable to the person at the other end of the recruitment process. And that person really wants to see the unique value that you bring to an organization. They want to feel like when they read your resume, they're not just reading the dot points that you have copy and pasted from your current job description or your previous job description, but they actually feel the unique impact that you have been able to have in a role. So adding your personal voice through some key sections of your resume can help you to do that. So while some areas of your resume are still going to have a first person implied voice, so not actually have a first person voice, such as the highlights through your resume and your skills profile, for example, there are some key sections that you can infuse your personal voice into without overdoing it throughout your resume. And that is your value proposition in your resume, as well as the blurbs that intro the various roles that you are going into more detail in as a part of your resume. And remember, now with the popularity of storytelling in professional settings and the use of LinkedIn, this idea of a more personal tone when it comes to your professional brand is much more accepted and embraced. Just remember to not do that throughout your entire resume and make sure you stick to including that first person language in those key sections. Number 2 for why your resume could sound weak is that you are using a passive voice instead of an active voice. Now, the research has shown that an active voice is seen as being more confident, and that is because it sounds more direct and in control. The key difference between an active voice and a passive voice is who performs the action. A passive voice is where the object of an action becomes the subject. For example, a passive voice might say, "The process was streamlined to enhance efficiency." Whereas with an active voice, you might instead say, "I streamlined the process to enhance efficiency." So this is where you are performing the action and you sound direct and in control. And what I find can help with this is to make sure that for each of the highlights that you are adding to the various roles in your resume, to start with an action-orientated verb. Start those sentences with an action-orientated verb, because that's already going to sound more active than passive. A program that I used to find found really helpful that I have shared on this channel before is the Hemingway website, because if you copy and paste the text that you are working with into even just the home page of that website, it's super easy to use, then it will immediately assess your writing on some key factors. And one of the things that it will highlight for you is an active voice versus a passive voice. So it will show you where your voice sounds weak. And mastering a active voice as opposed to a passive voice is something that is going to be really useful for your career in general. And number 3 for why your resume sounds weak could be that you aren't backing up your claims. So is your resume simply communicating a lot of vague statements without actually providing any evidence to those statements or any clear specific examples? For example, if you are referring to your commercial capabilities, then what is the budget that you have been responsible for? Or what's the range of the budgets that you have been responsible for? If you're talking about your team leadership, what is the size of your teams? What are other metrics that you can add throughout your resume that is going to provide proof for the claims that you are making? For example, this might be including percentage increases, it might be including dollar values, if you streamline processes and improved efficiencies and productivity or costs, what are the values associated to that? What was the cost saving that you were able to drive? And it might not necessarily always be numbers that you need to add evidence to your claim. For example, if you are talking about key stakeholders that you have built relationships with, instead of just using a vague phrase, specify the kinds of stakeholders that they are. What sort of teams have you liaised with the most? What are the third parties that you have engaged with the most? What are the government bodies or the peak bodies that you collaborate with as a part of your job? Being specific with names of teams or organizations or roles that people recognize throughout your resume is going to add more of that substance to your claims. Number 4 for why your resume could sound weak is that you sound unsure of yourself. If you don't come across as confident in your capabilities, then how do you expect a recruiter to be inspired with confidence to contact you for a particular job opportunity? Most people don't love to sell themselves when it comes to career opportunities or positioning their expertise in their resume, but it's really important that you do, particularly in a resume, because this is what is going to help you stand out from the sea of sameness that the recruiter at the other end of that process is wading through to find their dream candidate. You want to make sure that you are selling your skills as strongly as possible. And keep in mind that your resume is only going to be read by you and the people that you are engaging with as a part of this recruitment process. So you can communicate with confidence in that document. That is what recruiters want to see. So it might not be the way that you want to communicate with your colleagues or your peers at your next industry networking event, but it is important that you don't shy away from your capabilities when it comes to your resume. So when you are thinking about those action-orientated verbs for your highlights, for example, see if you can intensify them wherever possible. And also make sure that you are integrating the actions that you took to achieve particular results. For example, if you are talking about highlights through your resume, then describe the actions that you took to achieve those outcomes. Don't just assume that your reader understands what was required in order to achieve that. So your resume is not about just attracting to everyone else for every achievement, nor is it all about you. It is about finding that balance between selling yourself and still positioning yourself as a relationship-orientated team player. With these tiny changes, you can communicate with confidence, clarity, and credibility in your resume and stand out for your dream job. For more on the 10 tiny mistakes that you could be making in your resume, then check out my previous episode on this topic. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.